Good evening to all of you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. All right. So, where were we in the last class?
So we had to finish Harappa, and you said that today we can speak on the topics also, which you had given us to prepare.
Okay. All right. So I think in the last session we have had a discussion over this, and I think Vatsala and Nishant have already spoken about it, and probably you, Ritika, and Amritansu have not spoken. Amritansu has not joined also, so probably he is not very interested. So it's all right. So okay, Amrashri. So what topic have you prepared?
So non-cooperation movement, Chori Chora and non-cooperation movement.
Okay, so okay, we can begin with you. All right. And if Ritika is prepared or not, Ritika, are you prepared?
No, sir. Actually, I couldn't make the topic.
अच्छा, कोई नहीं. कभी और कभी आपसे डिस्कस
Sir,
कर लेंगे.
next time I will do the result of next
है.
lecture.
ठीक है, तो आज अमराश्री को सुन लेते हैं 15 मिनट, फिर हम स्टार्ट करेंगे क्लास. ओके. So Amrasri, so let's start then with you only. All right. So now you can begin. Yeah.
The Chori Chora movement will complete its 100 years in 2022, the Chori Chora movement completes its 100 years on 4th February, and the celebrations of it has been begun after inauguration by the Prime Minister of the country. For the celebration, the tagline for the event has been given Swarakte Swarashtram Rakshet, and the logo shows the peasant uprising and depicts the struggle that has been there. The important figures which played a key role during the Chori Chora movement included Purvanchal Gandhi, Baba Raghav Das, and Madan Mohan Malviya. As the current celebrations go on, there has been a lot of efforts by the government, such as exhibition of banned literature, organizing Prabhat Fairies to educate people about the Chori Chora incident, and also beautification of various sites and the development of the Chori Chora Smarak in as grand as the cellular jail and the Jallianwala Bagh. The history of Chori Chora movement is that it started on 2nd February 1922 with the retired army soldier Bhagwan Ahir beginning his struggle against the high food prices and liquor sale. And he was he was beaten by the local police and imprisoned, due to which the public was aggravated, and around 2,500 people stormed to the Chori Chora police station, wherein they picketed the liquor shops, and the leader was arrested and beaten up. This aggravated the movement, which led to the protesters dousing the entire police station with kerosene and putting it on fire, and led to the death of over 22 policemen. In retaliation, the sub-inspector Gupteshwar Singh announced firing over the place, which led to the death of hundreds of individuals, and martial law was imposed in the area. The result of the Chori Chora movement was that Mahatma Gandhi immediately halted the non-cooperation movement, and as a result, he was also sent to jail for a term of 6 years, which wasn't continued for six because of his ill health. M.N. Roy, a leading communist leader from that time, termed it as a legalized murder. And the significance of Chori Chora movement is that it gives a lot of lessons for people to draw inspiration from. One being that it shows Gandhi's resolute commitment towards non-violence, and it displays his tremendous moral conviction to pull back despite the movement being on its height. The subaltern historian Shahid Amin says that the Chori Chora movement and non-cooperation movement show the nationalistic impulse of the local peasantry. Another important point which Gandhi realized after the Chori Chora movement was that Indians are not prepared and trained well in the concept of ahimsa. Hence, the training of Indians has to be done in this regard. The Chori Chora movement also eventually led to the development of the Shaheed Smarak by the locals, and the Indian government eventually developed Smarak and also launched the Indian Railways, the Chori Chora Express between Gorakhpur and Kanpur. Chorichora movement also is an example of the Hindu-Muslim unity, and it shows, it gives lessons in leadership, as Mahatma Gandhi showed that one should always own up to his or her actions. Also about the non-cooperation move. So, sir, this was about Chorichora movement. Should I talk about non-cooperation also?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Uh,
I would like to ask you a few of the questions here.
yes, sir.
First of all, you didn't talk about the location of Chorichora.
Oh, Gorakhpur. Sorry, sir.
All right. So first of all, you will have to mention that where it is located,
Okay.
and secondly, obviously the historical significance of Chorichora. All right, and then at the end of the discussion, you have to narrate the story, the consequences of Chorichora incident to the India's national freedom struggle, how it played another role in shaping a new stream, especially in the rise of the so-called revolutionary terrorism in India's national freedom struggle. So that is one aspect you have to add on. Second, you have to also add on that what was the lesson that Gandhiji learned through his first mass movement, especially like non-cooperation, I would say, after Chauri Chora. So his strategy of the struggle to struggle that he learned, it was out of this particular incident also, that was Chauri Chora. So he realized that the mass movement can't be continued with the same force and same vigor for a long period of time, because the tendency of masses to sacrifice is very limited. All right, unlike the individual tendency to sacrifice a lot of things. So he also understood there is a limitation of the masses to sacrifice their entire, you can say, normal course of action for the sake of freedom struggle, in fact. So that became a major learning lesson for Gandhiji after this particular incident. Fine. And the strategy of Gandhi of struggle to struggle started from this incident only. Fine. So that you have to add on. Fine. And the thirdly, of course, Gandhi also realized that his so-called non-violence as a strategy or as a principle has not been successful in this case of non-cooperation movement. So he realized that perhaps it is also important to first of all train the masses that how to let's say fight a long drawn struggle, in fact, like freedom struggle, because he was very clear that the struggle is going to be a longer one, not a shorter one. So in a long struggle, you can't actually be impulsive. You can't be actually impulsive and reactionary. So impulsive or reactionary nature is not going to give you result. And he learned about this thing only through Chori Chora incident. Fine. And he realized also it is equally important to first of all train the masses on the principles of, let's say, peace and non-violence. So afterwards, you see that his strategy started changing in terms of promoting the idea of non-violence across in consider masses or across the regions in India. Fine. So he started also touring the different parts of India in terms of understanding the psyche of nation. All right. So these all things actually strengthen the Gandhi as a personality in terms of India's freedom struggle. All right. So that was an issue. So these all aspects have to be incorporated in your explanation.
Okay, sir.
Right. ठीक है, तो ये थोड़ा सा बेसिक था, बाकी सब ठीक था, ठीक है, वो सारे फैक्ट्स तो आपने करेक्ट कर लिए थे अच्छे से, ठीक है, ठीक है, तो धन्यवाद। फिर हम लोग और ऐसे ही एक और एक्सरसाइज करेंगे, ठीक है, आगे भी। Just a moment. So shall we proceed then? Okay, wait. I think the screen is visible to you. No, not yet.
Yes, sir.
Visible है अब?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
अच्छा, Amritansu has also joined now. Amritansu, आपने कोई prepare किया गया टॉपिक?
नहीं सर,
अभी नहीं किया है।
नहीं सर।
तो कोई एक टॉपिक प्रिपेयर करके किसी एक दिन, कल तो नहीं, परसों मैं चाहूंगा कि थोड़ा सा आपसे भी सुनूं 5-10 मिनट।
ठीक है सर, परसों करते हैं।
हाँ, परसों रितिका भी करेंगी, तो एक बार एक टॉपिक कोई भी आपको जो लगता है आप बड़ी आसानी से कर सकते हैं तो उसको तैयार करके कीजिए। Fine. So let us now get into the Harappa only. So see, in our last class, what we discussed about the origin of Harappa, and I explained to you a formula that is R1 plus R2 plus R3, how that these R1 plus R2 plus R3 resulted into the origin of Harappa. Fine, and that was the core issue, a core, you can say, factor behind the rise of Harappa as a civilization, in fact, because similar factors were also responsible for the decline of Harappa, and we have also discussed that aspect, if you remember, in the last class. But between the origin and decline, we have to also understand that some scholars also rate Harappa as an empire. Some say that Harappa may have been an empire also. So, do you agree? If this question is asked to you, suppose I give you this question, that critically examine that Harappa may have been an empire. Critically examine this statement. Now, the point is, first of all, you need to understand what is so significant to call any civilization or any culture as an empire, isn't it? So, let us first of all understand that, and we'll be able to understand then also whether Harappa was an empire or not. See, what are the features of calling any particular culture or civilization as an empire? The first of the features, in fact, is that empire has to be a widely extended area. So, in other words, the area must have been quite large. All right, a large, which means that of course it touches the two sides of oceans. In fact, two sides of ocean means the two sides of the sea area. So it should touch the two sides of sea area. That should be the concept of an empire. That is actually the idea of empire. Fine. That's the first, in fact, feature of empire. The second feature is that to call an empire, you also need not only geographical extension, but as well as the political central command as well. So that's another very important feature, that apart from geographical features, you also need to have a centralized command system, a centralized government system, centralized, you can say, administrative system in a particular empire. All right. So you have to have a central government over there. Fine. That is another very important aspect of to call anything as an empire. Fine. Third, to call any area as an empire, you also need to have a considerable number of armed forces. Considerable number of armed forces or army to protect the boundaries, in fact. So that's another very important feature, that you have to have even a full-fledged army, standing army, to defend your empire, defend your areas. Fine. Thirdly, you also have a sovereignty over your vast area in terms of collecting the revenue or taxes. So a centralized command should also enjoy sovereign power over the vast area in terms of collection of tax or revenue from those areas. Fine. So in other words, whether there is a financial jurisdiction of centralized command is there or not. So that is also another very important feature to call any particular area as an empire. The fourth is very important. Fourth is important because on this, even scholars like Stuart Pigott, the Stuart Pigott and other scholars have given a very important observation, that to call an empire, it is always essential to have large monuments, big monuments, contributions in the field of sculpture, architecture, to that extent. All right. So suppose if all these four features are there with any culture, then it should be called as an empire. All right. Now you apply these four principles with Harappa now. Apply these 4 principles with Harappa and your answer will be with you. So first principle was the geographical extent. So in that way, yes, Harappa was having a vast empire, is spreaded from Balochistan, that is on border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, to Sutka Jindor, that is on the border of Pakistan and Iran, to Daimabad, that is in Maharashtra, to Alamgirpur, that is in Meerut, Uttar Pradesh, to even Manda, that is in Jammu and Kashmir region. So that was the vastness of this empire, which was having an area roughly more than 1,51,000 square kilometer. It is around more than 1,51,000 square kilometers, as per the latest findings by the historians and the archaeologists in both India and Pakistan. So that was the vastness. So undoubtedly, it fulfills one of the features of an empire. Second, now to have a central political command, we have some limitation in terms of identifying the Harappan political system with all surety that there was some centralized command there in Harappa. Since we do not have much of the information about what kind of political system may have prevalent, so therefore there is always an element of you can say error that might be involved there in the context of calling Harappa as a centralized empire. Howsoever, with the kind of similarities in their culture discovered across the Harappan sites, especially like potteries, like beads, like seals, ceilings, even the bricks used for the houses, construction, urban pattern, town planning. Now, the town planning of Dholavira was similar to Lothal. Town planning of Lothal was similar to Mohenjo-daro. Town planning of Mohenjo-daro was similar to Harappa. So therefore, these all areas are quite vast. Even in current scenario, it is having more than 1,000 kilometers of distance to travel from Dholavira to Harappa or to Mohenjo-daro in that way. So still, during those days when you when we did not have, in fact, the modern modes of transportation, yet this such a vast empire was having uniformity, indicating of that some sort of centralized command may have been prevalent during the time of Harappa. But what kind of political system was in existence, whether it was a monarchy, whether it was a mercantile community controlling the system, or a priestly class people ruling over Harappa, we can't be assured about it because of or due to the lack of evidences to support it. So here we have some concerns whether Harappa should be called as an empire or not. Thirdly, taxation. Now, since we do not have enough of information in terms of supporting the argument that there was centralized command who was collecting the taxes across all the areas of Harappa, therefore again we have some limitations on this particular issue to say with all sincerity, with all you can say, safety that Harappa was an empire. Lastly, monuments. Now, definitely the kind of monuments that have been discovered in Mesopotamia, Sumeria, Egypt, now those monuments are missing there in Harappa. Because Harappa were not a people who loved beauty or aesthetic sense. So aestheticism was missing out in Harappan discoveries. So they were the builders, magnificent builders of the towns, of the other items also, but all of them were of utilitarian approach. All of them were having utilitarian approach in terms of they were used only for the purpose of utility, not for the purpose of aestheticism, aesthetic look. So we don't have the big monuments the way it is found, let's say during the time of even Mauryas, in the form of pillars. All right, in the form of pillars, in the form of caves, in the form of even stupas. So we don't have such kind of magnificent buildings or monuments, but we have the rudimentary form of construction in the form of the town planning, in the form of also the granaries or the food granaries, in the form of great bath. So these are the few of the monuments, or you can say the constructions discovered from the Harappan sites. Therefore, the argument of Stuart Piggott seems to be correct, that since Harappa didn't have enough of big monuments, so it is difficult to say Harappa was a big empire. All right, Harappa was a big empire. Therefore, it needs some more excavation, some more studies, some more evidences to prove that Harappa may have been an empire. That should be your conclusion. ठीक है, ये क्वेश्चन आ सकता है मेंस में कभी भी आपको, मैं अभी बता दूं आपको, और उसमें फिर बहुत लोगों को दिक्कत हो जाएगी, ये सब चीज एनसीईआरटी से लिख पढ़ के भी नहीं लिख पाएंगे लोग. ठीक है, so this is the reason why I have discussed this issue very clearly with all of you. ठीक है, now coming on this issue only, you can see on your screen just a moment. So total area here it is 1.25 only, but right now it is more than 1.51 square kilometer. All right, it is 20 times more than the area of Egypt, 12 times more than the area of Egypt and Mesopotamia together. So that is the vastness of Harappa in that way. Fine. Now there are certain popular settlements belonging to the civilization, which is a very big area. Large cities like Mohenjo-daro, which actually today happen to be the largest one discovered till now. However, there are many other sites which have not been discovered. For example, Ganeriwala. Ganeriwala has not been excavated till now. Fuxlan has not been excavated till now. Both of these sites are located right now in Pakistan. So Ganeriwala and Fuchsland, according to many historians, including even R.S. Sharma, they were of the opinion that these are the bigger sites, even bigger than Mohenjo-daro. But since they have not been excavated, that's the reason why many of the facts of Mohenjo-daro are still hidden in these Ganeriwala, Fuchsland, and other sites located today in the Pakistan region of Harappa. All right. So idea is Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Ganeriwala, Rakhigarhi, Kalibangan, Dholavira, they happen to be the big sites. We can see the town planning, which actually happened to be the most important feature of Harappa. And as I already told you, Harappa was known for two very important features. One was their ability to construct towns. Second one was their involvement in trade and commerce. Now, both of them were interrelated to each other. So as they kept growing in trade and commerce, their town construction also started improving. Rather, it started expanding. So town planning happened to be the most important exercise of Harappa. How town planning was done, let us understand that also now. See, Harappa used to manufacture bricks, and the bricks during those times were of two types: mud bricks and the burnt bricks. Mud bricks and the burnt bricks. Jala hua, seka hua. Interesting fact about Harappa was they were fond of using burnt bricks more than the mud bricks. The Harappan sites, whether you take the example of Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Chanhu-daro, Lothal, Kalibangan, all of these sites were built up by the burnt bricks. We have got only few of the constructions in Kalibangan done with the mud bricks. Mud bricks are basically soaked in the sunlight. Burnt bricks are basically heated on the fire. And the burnt bricks are largely used, especially in those construction where you have the impact of water on the construction site. Now see, Harappa is also distinct from Mesopotamia on this particular feature. Even in Mesopotamia, they were not knowing about the use of burnt bricks in such a massive scale. Mesopotamia people were also not knowing about the fact of using the burnt bricks on such a massive scale. They were still using mud bricks largely. And this is something commonly found across the Harappan sites. That is one very important feature of their town planning. Second, the bricks were always in same size, same shape. 1:2:4. 1:2:4 was their size of length, breadth, and the height. All right. So 4 was the length, 2 was the breadth, and height was of 1. So 1:2:4 was a ratio in which their bricks were all constructed. And this is commonly found in all the sites. Therefore, many historians, including R.S. Sharma, had to say that since there was uniformity in the brick shape and size, it simply indicated there was some monitoring agency who was monitoring in the context of the construction of these bricks. Then how is it possible that every brick was of same size, same shape? The bricks found in Lothal is similar to the bricks found in Harappa. So therefore, there was some, or there must have been some centralized power who was looking over all these affairs very strictly. All right, that was second very important feature. Third, Harappans were also having a fair idea about the use of bitumen. Use of bitumen, which is largely used in the joining of two bricks and making the watertight joints by applying the bitumen. It's act just like a cement. And the same bitumen has been used in the drainage system, in the latrine construction inside the house, in the great bath. So wherever the water was passing through, whether drinking water or the wastewater, they used to apply the same particular technique in terms of making the entire system waterproof system. Because you need to know, within the house also they used to have drains. Within the house also they also used to have small wells. So there was a practice of also having small wells within the house, and as well as there was also a practice of having some common wells outside the house, which used to draw the water for household work. So that was another very important feature of their urban or town planning. Fourth, their town planning was based upon the grid pattern in which every street, every road was cutting across each other at 90 degree. Grid pattern was the style of their town planning, in which they used to always give the proper spacing on the road, on the street, and the street used to cut each other at always 90 degree. An interesting fact about their houses was that except in Lothal, the houses of Harappa never used to open on the street. Never used to open on the street side. They were used to open on the side lanes of the street. In Lothal, we have found some of the houses or some of the construction sites where the doors were there, and those doors were opening towards the street only, which according to many historians, they have called it Bazaar Street. A question can be asked to you in prelims. In which of the Harappan site Bazaar Street has been found? Bazaar Street has been discovered. Answer will be Lothal. So as we know that Lothal is not only known for Bazaar Street, but also it is known for the dockyard, which was quite famous for the purpose of the transportation of goods through the waterways. So dockyard has also been discovered in Lothal. That was another remarkable discovery from Harappa. So since I was talking about the town planning design, so it was based upon the grid pattern. And interesting fact about this grid pattern was that every street was cutting across each other at 90-degree. Secondly, the door of the houses, window of the houses were not opening towards the street side. Fine. Thirdly, they used to make their houses in such a robust manner that it was not so easy to disturb the walls of their houses, because the walls of their houses were constructed on the basis of the English bond style. English bond style. Now, what is English bond style? See, English bond style, in which the bricks are placed in such a manner that the two bricks support the middle brick, and it provides a sturdy design to the entire construction site or construction wall that is used in the construction of the you can understand the wall or maybe the houses of Harappa. You can see on the screen, I'm sharing the screen now to make you understand it clearly. See on the screen, this is the English bond style. You can see this is exactly the construction you can also find in Delhi University. The buildings of many colleges of Delhi University has been designed on this English bond style. You can see there are the big bricks standing in front of vertically, in fact, between the two bigger bricks. This is how the bricks were placed by Harappans. So it is understood to be providing a very sturdy look to the building. This question can also be asked to you. What was English bond style in Harappa? तो आंसर क्या होगा आपको पता है? Fine. Now see, this is not the only specific feature of their urban planning or town planning. Rather, just I now told you that they used to care, they used to give a huge importance to the hygienic and cleanliness factor. And that is really remarkable for the people of Harappa. That too, I mean, you can understand, I mean, 5,000 years back, Indians were having a sense of hygiene factor, a sense of the cleanliness factor. Because drainage used to open always outside the house. That's one thing. Secondly, all the drainage were covered properly. They were never open drainage. So of course, we can pity upon ourselves that even in so-called modern era, we don't find such kind of hygienic factor being maintained in the urban areas of India. All right, we have open drainage system even in Delhi. We are living in just nearby the big Nala of Delhi. All right, now you can understand how spurious is that big Nala, besides which on the bank of that we are living, in fact, in Delhi also. So somehow it is creating a huge pollution. Directly and indirectly, we all are inhaling it. And definitely it is dangerous for many people, especially living nearby the bank of this great Najafgarh Nala, which is famous in Delhi. It is a very open one. It should have been covered long back, but it has never been done by any of the governments. But the idea is that we have not learned it from the Harappa. That's actually a fact. Fine.
Now, see, I mean, this is not the only feature of Harappa. The idea is that Harappa were also known for having some very important or significant features like, see, Harappa were always having this sort of construction of their town planning. You can see on the screen, this is what is called as, this is what is called as the citadel, and this is what is called as the lower town. Now, this was the normal planning of Harappa, found almost everywhere except in some areas. In some areas like Chanhudaro and others, we don't have citadel found. In Dholavira, we have three-layered system of town planning. But in Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Rakhigadi, Banavali, Kalibangan, we have found similar style of town planning. What was that? There used to be always a citadel. Citadel means the elevated platform. Citadel means elevated platform. Elevated platform. All right, and then you have had the lower town in which the towns were, the houses were constructed for the people of this area as well. Now, the interesting fact about citadel was that almost all the important monuments, like the big residential palaces, official palaces, royal halls, granaries, or even Great Bath. Now, even Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro has been found on citadel. So, the idea is, who were living in citadel? Who were these people who were living on elevated platform, having big palatial houses in comparison to that particular society? And not only that, but we have found all the bigger and the significant monuments like granaries, like royal hall for the priest, in fact, even Great Bath, all were located on citadel only. On the other hand, in the lower house or the lower town, you were having the houses for the commoners, houses or residences for the commoners. This pattern of house construction or town planning has been found across all the cities of Harappa, all the discovered sites of Harappa except two. In Chanhudaro, we don't have citadel. So probably in Chanhudaro, the entire area must have been membered by, must have been lived by the commoners only. So in Chanhudaro, there is no existence of citadel. And another very interesting site, Dholavira of Gujarat, has given us a different perspective altogether of their urban planning. Because Dholavira has a distinct position in the context of having three structures in town planning. Three structures. Now, obviously, Dholavira is not bigger as Mohenjo-daro. So, therefore, many of the historians they agree that Mohenjo-daro must have been the capital of Harappa because it was having the Great Bath, granaries, royal house, and other big structures which have not been found in other sites of Harappa. So Mohenjo-daro must have been the capital of Harappa. But similarly, Dholavira was equally very significant for two reasons. for two reasons. One is that Dholavira town planning was based on the three-layered structure: citadel, middle town, and also the lower town. Now you see citadel, middle town, and also the lower town. There were three-layered structure in Dholavira. So obviously interesting that in between this elevated platform and this lower town, there was one more construction, slightly elevated than the commoners, than the lower town, but not to the extent of the citadel area. And all these areas of Mohenjo-daro, in fact of Harappa, they all were fortified. The urban cities or sites of Harappa were commonly fortified. Fine. So you see in Dholavira, that is one distinction that was there in Dholavira. It was having three-layered town structure. Second one was, it is only in Dholavira where we find the use of stone pillars by Harappa to construct the towns. The stone pillars not used in any other sites of Harappa. So stone bricks and stone pillars have been used in Dholavira urban pattern or urban town planning. Fine. So see, these were the very important features of the Harappan urban centers. Interesting fact about all these urban centers are that we have got the occupation discovered, excavated of the people who were indulged into the non-agricultural activities. Non-agricultural activities, largely in trade and commerce. So they were importing, exporting the semi-precious stones, the food items, the beads, seals, the ceilings, jewelries. So these items were exchanged by the Harappans, which were non-agricultural items largely, in fact. But in Kalibangan, we have found a furrowed land, F-U-R-R-O-W, furrowed land in Kalibangan, which is an existence or evidence of the practice of agriculture done by the Harappans. So in Kalibangan, we have found the practice of agriculture was also being done by the Harappans. All right. So Kalibangan is a site in Rajasthan, and from there we have found this all evidences. Fine. This was the grid pattern we have just talked about. It used to cut across at 90°, and the same grid pattern method was followed by Le Corbusier to design Chandigarh in 1980s. All right. So this is how Chandigarh was designed by the architect named Le Corbusier, and he followed what Harappans did quite a long back quite a, I mean, old age, in a quite old age. Fine. So that is what was significance of this grid pattern for Harappa. Now coming to their religious belief system, come to the religious belief system. See, their religious belief system of Harappa we come to know through their artifacts and mainly the sealings. Fine. So one seal we have discovered from Mohenjo-daro, the yogic seal, or seal of a male deity from Mohenjo-daro. So this seal of male deity is surrounded by 4 wild animals: elephant, rhinoceros, buffalo, tiger, and having even deers on the feet, which is indicative of the Rudra or Lord Shiva of the contemporary time. So this person is sitting in yogic posture. So that is how we get to know that there was also an existence of male deity in the Harappa. Besides that, there was also a practice of the worshipping of mother goddesses, because we have found in one of the cells the mother goddesses has been depicted. Through the womb of that, a complete plant is coming out, which is indicative of the practice of mother goddesses in Harappa as well. Thirdly, we also find Harappans who are worshippers of various natural items, wild animals. So they were also worshippers of wild animals. They were worshippers of even the nature. Fine. And exactly, they were also the worshippers of some trees like people, neem, etc. They also believed in the concept of life after death. So therefore, they also having a concept of some spirit disturbing the individuals. Hence, they practiced wearing amulets to ward off the bad evils. So they used to wear even amulets to ward off the bad evils. Harappans used to involve in the practice of both burying the dead and also in the cremation of the dead bodies. So we have also found the burial sites of Harappa having ornaments and potteries with the dead bodies or dead skeletons, in fact. So that is again indicative of that Harappans must be having a belief system also life after death in that way. Therefore, it is said that they were believer in polytheistic naturalism, because in some of the sites of Harappa, the practice of fire altars were also in existence. For example, in Kalibangan, Lothal, and other sites, even Banavali, we have found the existence of fire altars, which is an indication of some sort of ritual belief, some sort of belief system in rituals also in the Harappans. So that was the most important feature of Harappa in that way. Next dimension is their economic system. Say economic system, we have to understand from their political support also to the trade and commercial activities. Obviously, Harappa was knowing about agriculture. They used to grow various kinds of crops. Cotton has been called in Harappa as Sindan. Cotton is said to have perhaps produced by the Harappans only on the large scale. So they were equally the manufacturers of cotton textiles. So idea is they were knowing about agriculture, growing various crops, wheat, barley, some pulses, cotton. They were the largely grown crops by them. In Lothal, we have also found the evidences of paddy being grown by them. So these all crops were grown by them, and this is how they used to survive. And we have got the evidence also from Kalibangan of practicing agriculture. We have found furrowed land, plowed land. Besides that, they used to also conduct export-import of cotton and silk, along with even indigo for the purpose of dyeing. So indigo, that is called as Neel. So they were also involved in Neel ki kheti, indigo plantation. So they were also producing indigo, and that was also sold in different markets. Secondly, they were using semi-precious, precious stones like turquoise, jade, methyst, carnelian. So of course, these were the precious stones, semi-precious stones at that particular point of time. They were having fair idea about also gold and silver. So these all items, these all metals and stones were also being imported and exported by Harappa. They were also having the idea of construction of jewelries like necklace, like rings, bangles, and dancing girl of made of bronze discovered from Mohenjo-daro also has a full hand of bangles, indicating of the bangles were largely used by Harappa for sure. The name Kalibangan itself shows Kali means black, Bangan means bangles only. So it was a site where a lot of black bangles have been discovered. Therefore, it has been named as Kalibangan. So bangles were also another industry for all of them. Besides, they were also good in construction of terracotta figurines and potteries. Terracotta is prepared through mud, but it is baked mud. Baked mud. So any baked mud prepared figurines are called as terracotta. So we have got terracotta figurines in the form of certain women, you can say figures, or also in the form of certain potteries, in the form of jars, jugs, etc. We also found terracotta figurines in that particular manner. Besides that, we have also got huge evidences of terracotta figurines in the form of toys. So various kind of toys were also constructed by them, which was equally popular among the children of Harappa. So mud toys, which are still popular in various parts of India, were initiated by Harappa only. Fine. So this is what Harappa was known for in terms of their trade and commerce. They used to have trade and commerce inside and outside both. From outside, you can see on the screen, Mesopotamia was a region of between Iraq or inside Iraq only, but nearby Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, entire area was under the Mesopotamian civilization only. And from there, we have got a very important inscription, that is inscription of Sargon of Akkad. The same inscription which we already talked about in our last class. Under this inscription, the words called Dilmun, Magan, and Meluha are mentioned. And these inscriptions are a good source of correlating the Harappan civilization with the contemporary civilizations of Western Asia. So Dilmun has been identified as Bahrain, Magan as Makran coast, and Meluha as India or Indus region or Saurashtra region of Gujarat. They used to have trade with the major cities of Mesopotamia like Susa, Ur, Nippur, and Kish. Susa, Ur, Nippur, and Kish. These are the cities' names of Mesopotamia with whom the trading activities used to be done, and those boats used to travel from Meluha, Magan, Dilmun to Susa, Ur, Nippur, and Kish. And it is not only about Mesopotamia, rather also in Sumeria, Egyptian, and in Central Asia, they used to have the trade with Harappa. Fine. So this is how we will have to understand the entire story of Harappa. So we have discussed about the features of urban centers of Harappa altogether very clearly. Fine. Now this is the bronze dancing girl, the photo which Nishant has taken and sent it to us. I pasted over here for all of you. Now, Great Bath, we have already talked about. Great Bath was equally a very remarkable construction of Harappa, which was done for ritual bathing only. This is a picture of Great Bath. Fine. Trade and commerce was another very important business of Harappa. Fine. Now you can see this is important information for all of you. That copper used to be imported in Harappa from Khetri mines. Church plates were imported to Harappa from Rohri hills of Sindh. Carnelian beads were imported from Gujarat and Sindh. Lead, शीशा जिसे कहते हैं, were also imported from South India. Lapis lazuli were imported from Kashmir and Afghanistan. Lapis lazuli were imported from Kashmir and Afghanistan. Turquoise and jade from Central Asia or Iran. Amethyst from Maharashtra. Then agate, chalcedony, carnelian, they all are the stones from Saurashtra. You can see these are the imports of Harappa, which can also be asked to you as a question in prelims. They can ask you lapis lazuli was imported from which part, turquoise from which part, amethyst from which part, carnelian from which part. Fine, that is importance of these all aspects. Fine. So we have discussed also they were having sufficient trade with other contemporary civilizations. Trade used to be conducted through this Lothal dockyard. You can see this is a perfect picture of dockyard. How the dockyard used to, look like. See, this is a dockyard inside the Harappa. And what they used to do from this dockyard only, they used to connect with the major sea area. This is the Bhogwa River. Lothal is located near the bank of Bhogwa. Bhogava. Bhogwa. So this is the Bhogwa River from where they used to come. This is a dockyard. Just bottom of your screen is a dockyard of Lothal. It's an artistic representation by one painter, which I'm showing to all of you. This must have been the picture of Lothal also. When Lothal was in existence and was functional city. So you can see here, this is on the bottom of your screen, this is a dockyard from where they used to transport the goods and it used to come down to the major river that is Bhogwa. And from this Bhogwa river, they used to connect with the sea route. That is what was the Lothal dockyard, which was a significant finding from Lothal. All right. And since we have not been able to decipher their script, that is a major limitation in terms of understanding the Harappa. And I told you they were having a specific style of writing that is called as pictographic script. Pictographic script they were using, which was Bostrophedan style. Bostrophedan style. You can see on the screen, this is the script of Harappa. Pictographic completely. All right. It has not been deciphered by the scholars till now.
So could you spell the style again? Which style?
Bostrophedan style. Boustrephedan.
Thank you, sir.
Bostrophedan style. What is the Bostrophedan style? See, normally what you do, today you write like this way, you will start writing from left to right. And then the second row you start writing again from left to right. But Harappans used to write, of course, left to right and then right to left. Then again left to right, right to left. This is called as Bostrophedan style. This is called as Bostrophedan style. All right. So they were using pictographic script, but in Bostrophedan style, which is yet to be discovered, it was yet to be deciphered by the scholars. Harappan society, we can simply understand on the basis of the kind of, we can say, urban setup we have discovered. So it was more or less, of course, having, egalitarian society, but since we don't have much of the information, therefore we can't say with all, sincerity that whether it was a highly unequal society or not. But there's no doubt, seeing the urban pattern, we can come out with this particular conclusion that they also were having elite class for people who were living in citadel, and they were also having some middle class who were well-to-do from well-to-do section, all right, having some more luxury, more you can say options with them. And there were also the people who were living in lower town, which was occupying the lower professional jobs, maybe the craftsmen, the laborers, and other people also, because you need to understand who were the people who used to clean the roads, who were the people who used to clean their toilets. So definitely there may have been some people also who must be at the lowest rung of the society. And what we have found nearby the great granaries of Mohenjo-daro, we have also found some construction sites which are said to have been used by the slaves or the menial laborers at that particular point of time. So it is also quite possible that there were some people who were living in those small compartments, very small compartments of only 6 by 8 feet. In those small compartments, there were some people living who happened to be the laborers who had to look after the granaries, whether they are filled up, let's say, continuously or not. So this is the reason why we say that there may have been also some social differentiation in Harappa as well. Political setup, of course, we have discussed just now that it is not clearly defined what kind of political setup it was there. So this is the seal that you already have seen, Pasupati seal. Belief system, I've just talked about belief system also of Harappa, that is religion basically of Harappa in that way. Decline, we have already talked about very clearly. Decline was not sudden. We have also understood it clearly, because such a vast empire can't decline in only one go. So I told you the decline must have been also gradual. All right. So somewhere, let's say around 1800, they started declining, and finally by 1500, we don't have any evidence of Harappa as such in that manner. But interesting fact about Harappa is that there are certain sites where we have found overlapping of the Harappan culture with the post-Vedic, later Vedic people culture. So it is quite possible that in certain areas Harappa was still continued, and they got intermingled with the other culture also. All right, that is one possibility that we can derive it from the excavation that we have found. And I told you very clearly, you should always say that Harappan civilization declined, Harappa never declined. Because decline of culture never happens. Civilization can decline because it is a mature phase, urban phase, that did decline of Harappa, there's no doubt about it. Because same kind of urbanization we don't find till 6th century BCE in India. What was achieved by Harappa has not been achieved even by any of the other civilizations, or let's say empires in India afterwards. So therefore, we have to understand and always remember that there was change in Harappa, decline in Harappa, but with continuity. Many of the features of Harappa are still continued. They are still continued. How? They are continued in the context of the town planning, the grid patterns, drainage system, their cultural features are still continued in our common surrounding. All right, I have given you a lot of examples to corroborate this particular statement. I mentioned to all of you that many of the cultural aspects are still continued in our country, especially let's say ritual bathing, let's say bangle being worn by the women of Rajasthan and Gujarat, vermilion breaded plate, tandoori roti. Now, these all happen to be the original ideas of Harappa. Fine. And this is, of course, Nissan sent this particular picture. So I have given this thanks to Nisant also. This is a mythical animal of Harappa, unicorn. A mythical animal which is yet to be identified, that was it a unicorn only or was it any other animal that may have been in existence at that particular point of time? Because if such animal was in existence, so why didn't we have the evidences of such animal today, even from the excavations of Harappa? But since it has been depicted widely on their seals, the depiction of unicorn has been shown widely. That's the reason why it is understood to be this is one of the most, you can say, popular animals of Harappa. The interesting fact about Harappa is that we have the evidences of, let's say, uh, of course, the oxes there from Harappa, but unfortunately, we don't have evidences of cows from Harappa. So you can simply understand, without cow, how can you get ox? So the idea is we don't have the evidence. It does not mean that they were not in existence. Fine. So cows were definitely in existence. However, the significance of cow that actually, I mean, it gained importance in Indian culture. It came very late. It came very late, not during time of Harappa for sure. All right. And similarly, we also don't have the much of the evidences of the use of horses by Harappa. So horses have also not been found profoundly in all the sites of Harappa. Even if there would have been some use of horses, it may not have been very profound. It may not have been very profound and very widely done by the Harappans. So importance of cow and so-called horse, it gained importance only after post-Harappa time. All right. So the idea is whether Harappa were knowing about cow or not. Of course, they must be knowing about the cow. However, the cow was not being depicted the way the other animals have been depicted in the seals and the ceilings of Harappa, or even in the form of toys of Harappa. On the other hand, horse, they also may be knowing about horse, but horse never happened to be the original animal of this particular belt. So there may have been few horses they may have seen. So that is quite possible for them. But horse was not used in any economic activities of Harappa at that particular point of time. Therefore, historians are of the opinion the horses were not found during time of Harappa. However, there are certain evidences from Surkotada, where we have found the bones of horses. Bones of horses have been discovered from Surkotada of Harappan times. However, the historians are of the opinion those bones of horses were not used by the Harappans frequently. In fact, Harappans were not very, profound user of horses for any of their economic or non-economic activities. That's the reason why historians are of the opinion that horses were not identified, not found during the time of at least mature Harappan phase. That is an idea. Fine. Is it clear to all of you now? That is all about Harappa. Fine. Now we have to see the next aspect, and the next aspect is of Rigvedic aspect.
Sir,
Uh-huh.
sir, what is the difference between seal and currency?
Seal and currency. See, seal is used for let's say beauty purpose also, for the purpose of showing some artistic designs. Fine. And currency is used for transaction purpose mainly. That was the basic difference between silks and currency at that particular point of time. And silks were obviously carved out from certain metals or certain, you can say, stones, like that way. Okay, now you can see the screen. Now we are entering into the Vedic age. Fine. Now see, Vedic era. First of all, who were the Vedic people and when this era began in India? See, the architect of the Vedic era happens to be the Aryans. So Aryans are said to be the founders of the Vedic age in India. Now the interesting point is that who were these Aryans? See, primarily speaking, the Aryans were basically an Indo-European linguistic groups. So we should not carry any racial connotation regarding Aryans. They were a people having a distinct language, a language which was not commonly spoken, understood, and even written by the people in India at that particular point of time. So they were the people who were from a branch of the people who used to speak Indo-European language. Now, when we say Indo-European language, what does it mean? It means that they were having a language with similarities with the European dialects, European languages which are spoken today, and also language which are spoken today in India. That Indo-European language was spoken by a group of people who were called as Aryans. And that language became known in India in the form of Sanskrit. So indirectly, they were the Sanskrit speakers. They were the speakers who were speaking Sanskrit as a language to communicate with each other. And through that only, they were able to, of course, expand their area across the Indian subcontinent. So Aryans were the people who were found initially in the Central Asian region, and they migrated to India and to various other parts of the world somewhere around 2000 BCE itself. How? I'll tell you how. See. See on your screen. I just told you that Harappa is said to have declined by this particular point of time. That is around 1700 BCE, they already declined. Fine. Now the Rigvedic era started somewhere around 1500 BCE. So first of all, there's a gap of 200 years between this or this. So 200 years is not a small period of time. It's not 2 years. It is 200 years. Now, 200 years will have a significant impact on human civilization. Now, you just try to correlate our own time. We are living in 2021. Just try to go back 200 years back from today. All right. Just सोचिए कि 200 साल पीछे चले गए आप. अब 200 साल पहले इंडिया में क्या क्या था? ऑफ कोर्स कॉलोनियल राज था, मुगल का भी राज था, बहुत सारे किंगडम्स थे, बहुत सारे राजा महाराजास थे, चौथा फ्यूडलिज्म था. ऑलराइट, ना कोई लॉ था, ना कोई ऑर्डर था. तो डेफिनेटली व्हाट काइंड ऑफ सोसाइटी इट वाज फॉर 200 years? We can simply understand the society was definitely not highly civilized the way it is found today. It was an era of, let's say, Raja Ram Mohan Roy or other people. So now you see, in 200 years, if Raja Ram Mohan Roy would not have been written in books, in textbooks, we would have forgotten him very clearly. In 200 years, what we have achieved, what India has transformed, you can see in your own surrounding. Now just imagine during those time when there was no any system of transmitting information and communication, then what kind of changes would have taken place in 200 years? It's a huge time gap. And we don't have much of information that what went here in this particular period. हमें कोई इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं है कि ये 200 साल भारत में हुआ क्या, उस समय हुआ क्या, और ये कहां से एक ऋग्वेदिक कल्चर आ गया, कहां से ये ऋग्वेदिक पीपल आ गए. ठीक है, तो अब आपको समझना है कि आए कहां से, वो आपको समझना है. देखिए, ये 200 साल काफी बड़ा समय था. नाउ सेंट्रल एशिया, now this is the pocket where the people developed a language which was called as Sanskrit. That's a fact. And from here only the people out there, because of many factors, either the climatic factors, the demographic factors, so because of rise of population also, that many of the branches of these people who happen to be tribals, now these tribals population, they started migrating to every direction. So some of them entered into Europe, some of them entered into area of West Asia, particularly Iran, and some of them also came to India. See, in this 200 years, these waves of migration kept on taking place. Fine. Now see, the people who went to Iran, there only they started telling themselves or talking about themselves that they are Aryans. They are Aryans and they belong to the pure race of Aryans. But in the meanwhile, there were also some branches of or some waves of migration that took place in India, which entered India somewhere around, let's say, 1700 BCE itself. And they started living, settling down in India, but they were not profound on developing their own language, which these Aryans could have done in Iran. Fine. So you can now understand there were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups of people divided on tribal lines, ethnic lines, or the line of their lineage. So one wave came to India initially around 1700, 1650 BCE. One group went to Iran, Syria, Turkey. One went to area of Europe, today's Germany and other part of Eastern Europe. Now see, they all were having common root, that they all came from Central Asia. Now see, interesting development. The people who came somewhere around 1650, so they already had settled down in Indian land, nearby area of Indus. Now when they came, they also found some of the Harappans. So most likely either Harappans accepted them or they accepted Harappans. They started living together with the passage of time. Now you see, there was another group who now settled down in area of Iran. Now these people also, being a tribal, being a nomadic, being a pastoral, they kept on searching some new land, some new resources. So one wave of these people migrated again towards India. So now you see, one group of people again migrated towards India. Fine, towards India means towards river Indus. उस समय इंडिया इंडस ही था. So towards Indus. Now when they came down to India, they found that there's already one set of people who, according to these people who came from Iran, who happened to call themselves as Aryans, they found here that already there are some people who are either, let's say, Dasas or Dasyus. No, Dasas and Dasyus. Very important. Why? Because these Aryans used to distinguish themselves from the people called Dasas and Dasyus on two lines. One, they were speaking a different language which these people were not knowing. Second, they were also racially superior. That these people were white, whereas Dasas and Dasyus were black. And not only black, but in the writings of Rigveda, they are depicted as a snubbed nose, thick lips, black color, just like demons. Fine. But these Aryans were definitely smarter than the Dasas and Dasyus. They were more smarter than Dasas and Dasyus. Because when they entered, they didn't enter like an invader. They didn't enter like an invader for all the areas. Now, wherever they found themselves could win over the local inhabitants, they adopted all the means to replace them and to establish themselves. And wherever they found that others are more stronger than them, that is the level of smartness. See, when they found the other means the local inhabitants are stronger than them, they became a peaceful entrant into their areas. All right, they became a peaceful entrant into their areas, indicating that they know rituals, they have the power to communicate to the god directly. So hence they convinced the local inhabitants, especially the local powerful inhabitants, which according to Rigveda happen to be the dasas in certain areas, in certain cases. So they made dasas as kings, or they accepted dasas as kings. And these Aryans themselves became as priests to these kings. See the level of smartness. So since they were ruling, they understood it is not possible to defeat them. They were already having control over the area. So very nicely they entered into the society, indicating that okay, you be the king, you are the powerful person, you are a king only, but we have a power to communicate to the god. We will communicate to the god that you should remain always the king, and we will legitimize your power here on this earth. So Dasa said, fine, we have no problem, you can be here only. So in certain pockets, they got integrated in the area where Dasas were the kings. But in certain pockets, where the Dasyus or Dasas were not superior, they themselves became the kings. All right, now see how smartly they entered into the Indian scenario. And once they entered, they started dominating the entire scenario gradually. And then we come to know about their story, about their, of course, emergence through the very first text, that is Rigveda, which provides us information about the entire early Vedic phase of India between 1500 BCE to 1000 BCE. So we get to know about the period of 1500 BCE to 1000 BCE through the textbook or through the text of Rigveda, which was written in Sanskrit. However, it was written only later on. I would say it was scripted later on, but it was in communication. It was in vogue, in practice, in the Aryan culture in this entire period. The Rigveda was a Shruti literature. Shruti literature. Shruti means that something you learn through listening, something to learn through hearing. So it was a Shruti literature which every Aryan had to learn it by heart. All right. So it led to the development of the concept of Gurukul in ancient time. Why Gurukul? Because a child was sent to or sent away from the household life at the age of 7 only to the Gurukul, and there only he had to stay for his entire adulthood. So he had to stay more than 10-12 years in Gurukul to learn this Vedic literature only. Fine. So people used to memorize the entire Vedic literature. Students were there to memorize entire literature. So it was basically a learning based upon rote memory. That was a kind of education was given to the early Vedic people. तो उनको पूरा श्लोक पूरा हाइम जो है याद करना होता था. So Rigveda has 1028 hymns. 1028 hymns they used to remember by heart. And when they used to do it, then only the education used to get completed. Towards the end of Rigveda only, we see the emergence of the Varna system in Indian society for the first time. Now, initially, the Varna was based upon the profession, but now it started acquiring the caste system. In the 10th mandala of Rigveda, for the first time, the social classification between or social classification of Indian society is mentioned clearly between Brahman, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. So in the 10th mandala, it is mentioned about the emergence of these four varnas from the primeval man, or from the godly man, you can say like this way. From the mouth, Brahman emerged. From the shoulder, Kshatriyas emerged. And from the thigh, Vaishyas emerged. And from the feet, Shudras emerged. So this is how the four Varna system emerged in India towards the end of Rig Vedic time and the beginning of later Vedic time. And who are these people? You need to understand. आपको ये समझना चाहिए कि हमारे कंट्री में आज भी इतना ज्यादा सोशल डिवीजन क्यों है? Why there is a huge social division on every lines, not only on the language but also religion, also caste, also culture. All right, why there's so much of differences there? You can see the seeds of differences were let down here itself. Because had they been similar people, then definitely they would not have classified themselves into Brahman, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. They were definitely different people. And once they started dominating over the others, they started classifying, or rather started practicing differentiation among themselves only, so that the others can do their job. Others can serve their masters. That is how we as a society, even till today, is divided on various lines: caste, community, religion, region, language, etc. So such kind of division you will not find in any part of the world, but only in India. Why? Because right from the beginning, right from the conception of India, this has been what India has inherited. Therefore, we say we are diverse people, but we also say that we have to maintain our unity, and that is the best gift for India, that is unity in diversity in that way. But if you see very philosophically to the social tensions that prevail in this country, the root of that philosophical cause is right from the concept of India itself. Because it has been a country of not only one set of people, multiple thousands of waves of invasions, migrations happened in India in last more than 5,000 years. That is why you see a variety of people in this country. The beauty is that, of course, they all are bound by a single necklace. And that is the beauty of India. All right. So the idea is this is how Aryans came into existence. Fine, that's a fact in fact. All right. So we'll keep it till here only. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट क्लास में हम लोग कंपेयर करेंगे ऋग्वेदा और लेटर वैदिक फेज को कि दोनों में डिफरेंसेस क्या क्या थे और कैसे फिर इट एक्चुअली पेव्ड द वे फॉर द इमर्जेंस ऑफ 6th century BC era, especially the era of Buddha, Jaina in fact. ठीक है, सो आज इतना ही रखते हैं, फिर हम लोग परसों मिलेंगे. ठीक है, फाइन. इफ यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चन यू कैन आस्क. We can conclude the class afterwards. ठीक है. And how was the class there? How's the class going on of geography and others? Nice, sir. ठीक है then. See you again on Saturday. ठीक है. Take care till that time. I'll send you the answers today of history. Fine. I forgot to send it, but today I'll send it to you. ठीक है. See you then. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.